not what I was expecting. Can I see one?
Well, no.
What's that for?
Make sure he's dead.
Sheriff, what happened?
No ID, no fingerprints in the system. For now, she's a Jane Doe.
He needs my help right now. 11 o'clock, I'm all yours. Subject is in her mid to late 20s. Hair brown.
Flash flood warning now.
Eyes gray.
What happened to you?
First, they bound her. Then they ripped out her tongue, poisoned her, paralyzed her, forced her to swallow the cloth. What is that? Dad?
No one could see what we have seen.
Thanks, everybody. Give it up one more time for the Autopsy of Jane Doe. I love horror movies. They make me really happy. But good horror movies make me really, really happy. And this is a good horror movie. Congratulations. It's not an easy thing to pull off. Congratulations, guys.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
One of the things that I loved about this film is that it takes its time. The first part of the film is about getting to know these characters, getting to be a part of their relationship. And most horror movies don't necessarily do that anymore. They don't sort of develop good characters that everything that becomes scary later is because you actually care about what happens to these characters. Can you talk about developing the characters, Andre?
Well, I mean, it's all in a script that I received. It's all it was really well written from scratch. But it's very much about engaging with the human beings before you put them, in harm's way. And it was also a lot about getting to know what they want and need in life, so that you actually feel for that. And when you get to, in a way, putting hindrances in their way to get that, it becomes like a big emotional, the stakes are just higher for everybody.
Emile, talk about working with Brian Cox, who plays your father here, who's maybe one of the greatest actors we've ever had.
Yeah, he's amazing. He had so many great, funny stories, and he was just like the perfect guy to work in that environment with, particularly because he's really shy when it comes to gore. So occasionally I'd take out, a phone and like show him a YouTube video of like an autopsy. I'd be like, "Hey Brian, look at this," and he'd be like, "Oh my god, oh," and he would really freak out. And then a few days later, I'd see him like with a 1,000-yard stare, and he'd look at me and he'd be like, "Emile, I've been thinking about that video you showed me. It was just the blood was so red." I mean, he was genuinely disturbed, so it was kind of funny.
How did he respond to the prosthetic gore
he
on
was
the set?
he was freaked out. Eventually he became a little bit more relaxed, but at first, there was like a makeup test being done, and the makeup artist's husband or fiance at the time was like, "Brian's totally afraid of gore, right?" And I was like, "What?" He's like, "Oh yeah, we'll see if he faints." And I was like, "Really?" But he was like, there's some people that like any type of gore stuff, it's really hard for him. So it was sort of a note of amusement throughout the shoot.
What's your relationship to gore?
Well, I went for my 30th birthday, in preparation for the role, I went to the Los Angeles County Morgue, which is the biggest morgue under one roof in the world, according to the director of it, Craig Harvey, who was really proud when he told me that. And I went from never having seen a dead body in my whole life before to seeing like 400 It's massive. This open crypt. It looks like a
Open?
It's like a Costco, but instead of like stuff on the racks, the open racks, it's like bodies in clear plastic. It's really disturbing. And I saw 5 or 6 active autopsies being done, and I mean, you had to like lift my jaw off the floor. It was like I was in that much shock. I was totally traumatized, to the point where afterwards I was like, was it worth it, Emile? Was that prep really worth it? Was your craft really that important? Like sitting in bed at night,
Did you find that
like,
it was
not being
worth
able
it?
to sleep. I was like, was it worth it?
When you
and
got
then
on
it
set?
was worth it. It was the good news is that it was worth it, because there was sort of a dourness or a sadness and melancholy that I kind of felt, and I don't know if the character necessarily would have had that if I hadn't gone. And I remember I looked over to the director of the Morgue. Sorry, André. And we were literally looking at someone having their skull sawed open and their brain removed. And he looks at me and he goes, "There's your computer." And I was like, been working here long? And and then I go, "So, Craig, are you happy to be alive?" And he was like, "Oh yeah." So, in a certain sense, it was very life-affirming.
Andre, what sort of research did you do? Did you go to any morgues? Did you meet with any autopsy performers?
Yeah, of course. I went to several morgues. I didn't see an actual autopsy. Not really I would like to, but it just didn't work out at the time when I was there.
In the future?
Maybe, maybe in the future.
His legs wouldn't move. They didn't work out when he was supposed to walk through the door.
But no, of course, I talked to a lot of coroners and assistants, and really get to understand how they are as human beings around in a way in the autopsy situation. And we heard some amazing.
We had a guy
stories.
that was on set named Stuart, who was actually a medical examiner in England, because we shot the film in London. And he was a really well-established guy who was quite a character. And he
I gotta imagine you have to be a coroner or a medical examiner.
Yeah, I mean, he really was quite a character. I mean, I asked him at a certain point, I was like, how do you like handle like working on the bodies all day? And he's like, I think I'm a low-level psychopath. Not a violent one, but just, doesn't bother me, doesn't. And I was like, wow, okay. And
Definitely not gonna push your buttons and make you a high-level psychopath.
And then I remember sometimes I would ask him, it was sort of one of those things where you just immediately regret asking the question. I'd be like, "So Stuart, tell me like a little bit about your job." And he'd be like, "Well, there was a man who was trimming his hedges the other day, and he had an electronic saw, and he was just trimming the hedges, and he clipped a little bit of barbed wire, and the barb shot into his neck, and he died." And I was like, "Wow." And I said, "Stuart, do you go out a lot, or do you do stuff? Like, I take it you probably aren't into like snowboarding or something like that, or skiing." And he was like, "I never go out. I never do anything."
Just watching my copies of Dexter.
I mean, I think he had dealt with so many freak accidents that he was just like, for the first few years, I was just afraid to die. I mean, it was.
Now I'm
that
not
was kind of
afraid
an evil
anymore.
laugh. You really took some relish in that. You were like, ha!
For the first few years, I was afraid to die. That means that he's now not afraid to go. He's just waiting for it. Andre, what attracted you to this script?
As you said, the maturity of it, the characters' relationship, the scare factor, the way it builds suspense and tension throughout, and it just keeps mounting and mounting and getting more and worse and worse. And the fact that it gets worse is the deeper they dig. It's just an amazing mystery. What happened to her? What happened to Jane Doe? And as I was reading the script, I was just dying of curiosity, like making up theories, and it was just an amazing screenplay.
And now, about 98% of it takes place in this one location, in the morgue. Where was that location? How did you set it up? Was it like a studio so you could sort of shoot and do anything you wanted in it?
Yeah, I mean, all the interiors are mainly shot on our stage. We built a set. There are a couple of exteriors that we found locations for, just outside London. But yeah, we built this enormous one-piece set where we could shoot everything chronologically, so that and we designed it based on the movements of the characters in the script, which was a luxury in a way, and it gave us so many opportunities to make it feel like one whole environment and unify the film in a way.
I'm curious, when I was watching the film, and as I said at the beginning of this, I watch a fair amount of horror movies. When I was watching this, a lot of it is this autopsy, and you're peeling skin off, you're pulling a brain out. Do you shoot a lot of different versions of this so that you can go as kind of gory as you want in the edit room and then pull it back? Or is sort of what we saw on screen almost exactly how you saw it would be?
I mean, it's pretty much the way there is more gory stuff left on the editing room floor, there is, but not that much. Because we've struck a balance, I think, as we were preparing it, between making it beautiful and making it, in a way, forcing you to be so interested in watching it that you kind of have to look at this stuff.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I think you did a beautiful job of that.
What was kind of funny, though, is when I was first sent the script, there was like a page in the beginning of the script where it was like a disclaimer's note. It was like, an autopsy is by its nature graphic. However, this script, the graphic nature of the autopsy is intended to be merely representational and abstract and expressionistic. And you watched the movie, and I was like, I don't think they gave Andre that note. I think maybe the producer was like, nah, don't put that page in. Let's send it this, But I think that is part of what makes the movie really scary. It's not just the scary movie element. It's like, it's horrifying seeing an autopsy. Yeah. It's just like when I was horrified in the morgue. It's just unsettling. I mean, it's really unsettling.
I could be wrong, but you haven't really done a horror movie before, have you?
No, never.
So what drew you to this one?
Well, I watched a lot of scary movies growing up, and then I made a film called Killer Joe with William
Love that
Friedkin.
movie.
And
Yeah.
Friedkin would always be talking about The Exorcist, which is like the big, massive movie he did. And it would be like, Exorcist that, Exorcist this.
He
And
doesn't shut up about it.
he loves it. I mean, it's a classic film, and rightly he should. And so I was sort of interested and fascinated by the idea of making something truly terrifying film, and it's just a very unique type of movie-going experience where you have like real fear and kind of dread, and most movies just they're not really geared towards that, and so it's a very different type of movie-going experience. You get like your adrenaline glands are just like firing on all cylinders.
Did you send Friedkin the script for this and see what he thought or anything?
No, but I told him about it.
Are you excited for him to see it?
I actually am, yeah. He really loved the Babadook a couple years ago. He loved it,
remember
which
him
is
writing
so
about that.
crazy, yeah.
Yeah. Killer Joe, in its own way, is kind of a terrifying experience, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's unsettling.
Yeah.
It's unsettling.
At the very
It's
least,
like the way a butler describes being disturbed. It's unsettling.
when you go into performing in a horror movie, are you looking at it as just sort of behaving as naturally as possible, like any role that you had done before? Or is there a different kind of performance that goes into a horror movie?
I mean, to be honest, for me, there was a very different kind of performance because it wasn't like a biopic where you're trying to get into the headspace and like live the life of the character that you played in a way. This, to me, it was like I just treated it like I was going and just playing make-believe as a kid or something. So I would kind of go in and out of it and just have fun with it and just to be as relaxed as possible because I actually found it like if you're running from a monster or from something, some supernatural forces, and you're supposed to be kind of hysterical, it's a lot easier to do that when you kind of are coming at it from the perspective of I'm just having fun here, and then you can actually buy into the idea of the make-believe. If you actually are like putting your serious actor hat on and being like, I need to get into the mind state of the supernatural forces, and then you just start to feel a little bit ridiculous, you know? So I actually think you'll do better work coming at it from the let's just have a really fun time, and then it's all of a sudden it's believable and people believe it when they watch it, as opposed to like Daniel Day-Lewising The Ghost or something.
I want a Daniel Day-Lewis method acting horror movie. That would
When
be
you
amazing.
run down the hallway. Yeah.
You mentioned biographical film. You played Cleve Jones in Milk, and they're about to release a mini-series based off of Cleve Jones's memoir.
When We Rise.
Yeah, and I was listening to an interview
And
with
his
him.
book just came out as well.
I was listening to an interview with him, and he said that you and him became like pretty good friends when you were researching the role. What was that like?
It was amazing. He's such an inspirational guy in the gay rights movement and such a powerful speaker. And what a wonderful sense of humor and fun. And a lot of people will come up to me and be like, oh man, I liked Milk. I liked you in Milk. And I always tell them, like, well, the only reason you liked any of what I did in Milk is because I literally just did an imitation of Cleve. He is that guy. He's so funny and kind of charming and just a sly wit.
Did he have any notes for how he wanted you to play him?
He was pretty cool. He was actually really cool. And I think there was one moment where he kind of said, I don't remember exactly what he said, but he was like, it's okay to play me as I am. You know what I mean? You don't need to try to change me or my personality to fit some idea of what I should be. Just play me as me.
Andre, I have to ask you, one of the films, it's hard not to be referential when you make horror movies because the genre itself in so many ways is always sort of referencing, and I felt like in many ways this is a great homage to The Thing, just because it's a one location thing, you're not really sure what the thing is or what is actually, where that central mystery of who the villain is or who the monster is. Was that in your head when you were making this film? Were you thinking about that movie?
I mean, I love that movie. I've seen it a dozen times or more. So clearly, a film like that will always be in the back of my mind or in my kind of, where I come from completely. But it wasn't specifically in my mind. I think I'm a bit afraid of references when I make a film. Because I don't
keep anything specific out of your mind?
In a way, I do. But there is, I was looking at the movie Seven, actually, as a bit of a reference. Wow. Because it's so grounded and such a mystery, and it has that, it has kind of, these characters walking around dead bodies all the time.
And it has such a beautiful way of depicting the details of the death and the bodies as well. I can definitely see that now that you say that.
There was actually there's a scene in the movie where Brian and I are looking at the Jane Doe, and I think the lines are, how do you even do something like this? And I remember we were shooting the scene, and I was to Brian, I was like, this is like that scene in Seven when Brad Pitt asked Morgan Freeman, like, have you ever seen anything like this? And Morgan Freeman was like, no. And I was like, this is just like that scene, and we were kind of laughing.
That was a really good off-the-cuff impression of Brad Pitt in that scene. That's exactly how he performs that line, actually.
Thank you.
I watched that movie recently, and he does that, like, have you ever seen anything
like this?
No.
No. It's funny, Morgan Freeman answered it kind of like he was annoyed, just like, no, you fucking idiot. No.
Both Brian Cox's character, I think more so than your character, has a macabre sense of humor. He's a gallows sense of humor when it comes to the bodies. We see him playing sort of tricks on other people using the bodies. Was that something that you also took from the folks that you met in the morgue, that they as well carried a kind of gallows sense of humor when it came to dealing with the bodies?
I mean, I don't know if it was gallows sense of humor, but there was dudes that were just really laid back when they were working in the morgue. They'd be like, hey man, will you take a picture with me? And I was like, yeah, let's just go back to the showers and let's just get you cleaned up and and they'd be like, oh no, it's cool. And hand over me, on me, oh yeah, get in really close here. And I was like, feeling like I had bits of
can we not have the body in the background on your Instagram and me,
Yeah, it was it was cool. And what was that word you said? Macabre?
Yeah, I always forget how to pronounce that.
I pronounce it. I've been a macabre for my whole life. I think that might be wrong.
Macabre might be wrong too.
Macabre. Macabre sounds right.
Macabre sounds like something Hispanic, like a
macabre.
Yeah, exactly. Let's open it up to the audience for questions. Who has questions out here?
Hi, how are you guys?
Hello.
I was wondering, do you have any advice for actors and directors trying to make it in this industry?
Well, I'll take that one first. I think it's just an interest in film and performance. I think that's the number one thing. It's just persistence. It's like if you find yourself interested in the arts, just expose yourself to as much of it as possible, and and I think that's a great way to learn. You know, it's just watching what other people's work can really inform a lot about what you like, what you don't like. Sometimes, actually, I find watching bad films or bad performances can teach you just as much about good acting, you know, as anything else. It really works. I mean, I remember sitting in, you know, 9th grade drama class in high school and being like, wow, these actors are maybe not the best actors I've ever seen. But being able to see that and kind of identify that, it actually, looking back on it, it really taught me a lot about what I like in acting. And because I'd be like, oh, well, they could do that better. That would make that work a little bit better. So I think, you know, if you're people who are in school or in these classes, you can actually learn a lot from learning what you don't like or learning what the wrong move is, just as much as watching, you know, Meryl Streep or a lot of other people.
Do you remember a specific movie or performance that made you realize what kind of actor you wanted to be, what kind of roles you wanted to take?
The first movie I saw where I was like, I really want to be an actor was the performance of Kevin McAllister in Home Alone. I was like, I want to be like, I was like 6 years old. I was like, I want to be like the dude on the screen who's like swinging that paint bucket and hitting Joe Pesci on the head. I want to be that guy. It was a deep, deep soul calling.
Your parents were like, ah, shit.
They were like, oh gosh, keep me away from the paint cans.
Andre, what
Seal
about
off the garage.
What about you as a filmmaker? Was there a film, a specific film that you remember that made you think, oh, that looks like something that I want to do?
It was like Showgirls, right?
That's not a bad answer. That's a good movie.
He's a lot younger than he looks.
No, I don't. That's a weird thing. I don't really have that one movie. I've been asked that question a few times. I don't really have that one movie that was like an epiphany of anything. I watched Bond movies. I watched Indiana Jones. I watched all kinds of stuff like that. Die Hard is, you know, is a film that really grabbed me.
He was almost cast in Die Hard.
I was going to say, you have a bit of a Hans Gruber style about you.
Excellent.
Die Hard.
Oh, Die Hard. Oh, really? Yeah, didn't see that one, Andre. Next question.
Hi guys, thanks for being here. Emile, have you done any stage work? And if not, have you considered doing any theater?
I actually, the first gigs I ever had were theater summer camp plays in the Wilgear Theatricum Botanicum in Topanga Canyon, which is like weird hippie, like fairies in the night kind of neighborhood. And I loved it. I did Midsummer Night's Dream 2 summers in a row. And I was like 8 and 9 years old. And it was a really wonderful way to be introduced to acting and to just associate it with like fun, outdoorsy summer camp vibes. You know, it's a far cry from like, you know, some cloistered set environment where you're like, man, acting is really boring. So that was great. And then recently, I'd certainly be open to doing stage work. I mean, I have a lot of fun and, you know, even just like a live performance like this, I always have a lot of fun with it. I get a lot of energy from it. So I would certainly be open to it. I mean, I want to for sure. I feel like I'm not quite like a real actor until you like tackle a good bunch of stage work. So until then.
I think we have time for one more question.
Hey, Emile, you were in one of my favorite films, Into the Wild. I was wondering what that experience was like for you. And Andre, you also like made Trollhunters, which was like really awesome. Did that help in your working on this film at all?
Well, for me, you know, Into the Wild is a film that I loved the book so much, and how Sean Penn had the idea to cast me, I'm still kind of curious. I mean, when he first met me, I was like 40 pounds overweight. I was like way, like I was like pretty big. I had a shaved head. And because I'd just been sitting around eating McDonald's for like 1 year after Alpha Dog. Like literally just McDonald's for a year.
Why?
I don't know. I was 20 and not the sharpest tool in the shed. You know what I mean? And he had seen Lords of Dogtown, a film I did, and he just saw me in this particular role. And so, you know, there was a long process of, you know, learning to appreciate the outdoors, nature, getting back into shape, you know, really learning to appreciate running and the philosophies that I was exposed to, and then the actual shoot itself, which was just the adventure of a lifetime. I mean, it was like a 7-month shoot, going to so many different locations, meeting so many interesting people. It was such an overwhelming opportunity for someone to have, especially for an actor to have when they're only 21 years old. I mean, I felt really old at the time, but looking back on it now, I mean, I'm 31 years old. I'm like, whoa, that was like a huge responsibility, you know, essentially doing a lot of times in that film, which is like a one-man show, and having Sean like right there with me, who was like my idol, you know. I mean, coming up, watching all the Sean Penn performances, he was just the man to me.
How was he as a director with you? I've heard mixed stories. I mean, and he's always a great director, but in terms of how he deals with his actors, he can be soft, and he can also be like, that sucked, do it again.
He was, I actually found him to be pretty, he was sometimes really hard. Like, if I were to like stumble down like a snowy embankment, if someone like threw me the rope and I'd be like, you know, he'd be like, pull that rope back, you know, and then the rope would like slither away. I'd be like, no, wait, you know, because he would want me to climb up, because that's what McCandless would have done. I had to have a little bit of self-sufficiency. But then he could be like the most tender, soft guy for these intimate scenes of emotion, and he's like such a sensitive guy. He really is a tremendous director and person.
Andre, and how did Trollhunter help you prepare for this film?
It helped me prepare in a way that it was like the opposite of this movie. Trollhunter is such a kind of wild, crazy movie, handheld, and it made me want to do something opposite. This movie is much more controlled and is much more, you know, about performances and about careful storytelling. And it just proved to me that I really need to make a film that is like Jane Doe. It's kind of really where I feel much more comfortable as a director. Trollhunter I had to kind of do because it was a necessity of the story that demanded it, but on...
Jane Doe's kind of about old school craftsmanship in terms of filmmaking, the process.
Yeah, and which I really enjoy. I love that. So.
And it's beautiful. You do a wonderful job. Guys, when can people see The Autopsy of Jane Doe?
December 20th, and then on 21st, and then it's slowly going to come into more and more theaters. So,
congratulations, guys. You did a wonderful job. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah.
The Autopsy
Check
of
it
Jane
out.
Doe, everybody.